Hey everybody, this is Dream, and we have a nice little slate here on DraftKings. Quite a few games in this one. This slate also does include the Tampa Bay Toronto game, which the other slate does not, so just keep that in mind. Uh, and so, without further ado, let me get into the teams I think are stackable. So, obviously, the New York Yankees, the Baltimore Orioles, the Texas Rangers, the Minnesota Twins, and Chicago White Sox all have good options when it comes to stacking potential, and they all face really bad pitching and have good upside in these particular matchups. And so I look for those teams to be the most likely guys that you're going to want to try to stack in this particular slate. So let's go ahead and get into pitchers I do like. So the first guy is Jacob deGrom. He's actually been extremely consistent in his 7 games. He's been over 30 fantasy points in 5 of them, and then 24 against Atlanta, and then in his first game he got about 20. So he's definitely somebody. He's super expensive, obviously, but I think he's going to be worth it today against a pretty awful Chicago Cubs team, and so I look for him to be in a position to have a really big game. The next guy is Garrett Cole. Now he's a little bit boomer bust lately, but he does have some upside because he can get the strikeouts. But he has been boomer bust. If you look at his past games, he's had some 10s and 15s, and so he's done pretty good against Boston this year, 19.8 game, but I don't know that he's in the best position. Hadn't been pitching all that well, with the exception of the last game, and so he's a little bit hit and miss for me. And the Yankees have been struggling as well. But if they can play well, then he'll have a better chance of getting the win and stuff, which will help his points. Then the next guy that I like is Yu Darvish for San Diego. I think a little bit tougher matchup, but he's been playing really well lately. He's averaging 24 for the last 10 games, and you can see that he's been pretty consistent, having a lot of good games, and so I think he's in a good position. He does pretty good on the strikeouts, so he doesn't hurt you too bad from that perspective. And then the next guy that I like is Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. Now, he's got a little bit tougher matchup against Arizona, and he's been pretty inconsistent lately, having some really bad games. But overall, I still think he's a really good pitcher, and he does have a potential to get a W in this matchup. And so he's definitely somebody that I have to take a look at the time. And then I've got a couple more guys. Kyle Wright is somebody you can consider for Atlanta. He's been pitching pretty well. He's had a couple bad games. He's kind of in the same boat where he's been a little bit inconsistent. But San Francisco does strike out a lot, and that will help him, even though he's not a big strikeout guy most of the time. He does have tendency to have good strikeout games against teams that do strike out a lot, and San Francisco is definitely a team that can play that way. Two more guys, sorry. Jordan Montgomery. He's really only had one bad game since he got traded to the Cardinals, and that was against Atlanta. He got 3.9 fantasy points, give up 5 earned runs. But in his every other game, he's never given up more than 1 earned run in a game for them. Though he doesn't have the strikeout upside, he's a pretty safe option, and he's pretty inexpensive, so that's definitely an advantage. Though Milwaukee is a team that's pretty good, so you do have to be careful there. And then one more guy that I like, is Michael Kopech for Chicago White Sox. He's been very inconsistent. He's had some big games and some duds, but he does have some upside in this matchup against the Colorado Rockies because it's away, and he's better at home than he is away, and Colorado is not good at home on the road, excuse me. So I look for him as a potential cheap option. If you're really just desperate to save money, you could go to him. I definitely don't recommend him necessarily, but he's in a good position. So one guy to avoid with the power of 10,000 suns is Mitch White. I don't understand why when people write this guy up as a good pitcher. I mean, he's had one game over 20 all season long, most of them, and not come close. I don't understand it. I don't get it. He's got a 5.09 ERA. He doesn't get that many strikeouts. I don't get the support. His stats don't make any sense, to be a positive player. So I don't get it. But I always see the write-ups oh, Mitch White, he's gonna have a good game today. No. And then there are a couple of pitchers I really like to take advantage of. One of them is Nick Pivetta, and another is Jacob Junis. Both these guys tend to give up a lot to people, and I like to poke at them. Also, Oakland's pitcher Ken Wadichek is somebody I like to go up against. So in a couple games he's pitched. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the players themselves. We have quite a few players that are going to be good today. So let's go ahead and get into catchers. So the first guy is going to be kind of a Hail Mary option, and that's Shea Langurley's for Oakland against Texas. Now he's very boomer bust, but he can hit home runs, and so that's what we're kind of looking for in this position. And so if you just need to desperately save money, you can go down to him. But I do like Gary Sanchez a little bit better from Minnesota. He's in a nice little matchup here today, and he should be somebody that has some upside in the particular matchup. He's had a home run in the last 10 games, and so he's somebody that can do that on occasion. So I like to. He's always a good backup option if there's not, if you can't afford a more expensive option. Sean Murphy is also in play here. Now he hasn't been hitting the ball quite as well, but he's still scoring the fantasy points that we would need out of him. Almost 6 fantasy points a game last 10, but he had 12 last time. And I think he's in a good matchup here in order to take advantage of Texas's subpar pitcher. And then Adley Rutschman is my next guy for Baltimore. He's in a great position here. He's been batting pretty well, 8.6, 313 last 10 games, 2 home runs. Really like what he's doing, and he's a nice plus matchup, though he is a little bit expensive. The same can be said for Will Smith. He's been playing pretty well, 7.2 fantasy points a game. I had 6 yesterday, but obviously we would like him to get more than that. But he's doing okay, and he's somebody you have to consider at this position. Kirk for Toronto is also a great spot. 8.3 the last 10 home run. He's in a good spot against a subpar Tampa Bay pitcher. And I have 3 cheaper guys, I guess. If they play, then they're going to be guys that you want to take a look at. One of them is Austin Barnes for the Dodgers. He's been just absolutely murdering the ball when he's playing. 10.2, 371 with 3 home runs in the last 10 games he's played. He doesn't play every day, but when he does play, he's usually a good player. He doesn't have a ton of bad games either, so he's somebody I like to, and he's super inexpensive, so he's somebody I really like to use when he does play. And then Danny Jansen's another guy I like. He's 8.1, 333 last 10 games. I really like what he's been doing, and he's somebody I like to use when he plays as well. And then finally, Travis d'Arnaud for Atlanta. He's in a plus position against San Francisco. He's been batting really well, 9.1 the last 10. He had some big hits yesterday, and it's not showing the San Francisco game on here yet, but he had some hits yesterday, which are really good. So I look for him to have another good game against San Francisco. So that's why I got a catcher. At first base, we have several good options here. Luke Voit is probably my top option. Super inexpensive. He's averaging 7.3 last 10 games. He's got a good pitcher to go against in Baltimore, and he should have some upside in this particular matchup. Another guy I like is Albert Pujols. Now, he's kind of a Hail Mary option, and he's almost, not quite minimum price, but almost, and he's trying to get to 700 home runs. He's only a couple away, so look for him to be a potential option. He's actually hit a home run in 2 straight games, so hopefully he can get another one. Jose Miranda is in a great spot for Minnesota. He's been playing pretty well, 7.3, 316 the last 10. Really like what he's doing. Jose Abreu is somebody I really like here. Jose Abreu. There you go. For the Chicago White Sox. I really like the Chicago White Sox in this matchup. And Abreu has been playing really well. He's had a lot of good games. He's batting 325 last 10, which is a little bit above his average. And he hadn't had a home run, but he's kind of due for one. So I look at this against Cole. He's a great guy to get a home run against. Ryan Mountcastle hasn't been hitting quite as well as you'd like at 863, but he's still hitting the ball well. Still getting home runs occasionally. And we definitely like him in a nice plus matchup against Washington. Freddie Freeman is the obvious guy. And then Nathaniel Lowe for Texas. He's been one of the best players for a little bit for the last month or so. And he's averaging 7.7, 333 with 2 home runs the last 10. Look for that to continue. He's kind of cooled off slightly, but he's got a nice little plus matchup in this one. And then I haven't really ever included this guy before, but he just keeps getting consistent, and so it's hard to ignore him. Mark Mathis for Texas Rangers. In the last 10 games, he's averaging 308.1 with a home run, and at home, he's been really good. He's been good. Okay, he's been okay all the games he's played, but he's really starting to play more consistently. So I think he's somebody you have to take a look at if you just desperately need to save money here. At second base, excuse me, I have Gunnar Henderson for Baltimore against Washington. He's been hitting the ball pretty well. His batting average is good, and it's just a matter of if he can get a home run again, that will definitely boost his potential here. Luis Garcia for the Washington. Sorry. He's been hitting the ball pretty well. 8.13 for the last 10. Really like him. Excuse me. Gabby Torres for the Yankees is somebody I really like in this particular matchup. And then he's been hitting the ball pretty well. 9.3, 225 the last 10, 3 home runs. Not many guys on the Yankees outside of Judge have been hitting the ball well, but he's been one of them, and they look like they're finally starting to click a little bit again. Marcus Simeon's a guy I really like, 11 fantasy points a game last 10. And then Mookie Betts, I mean, obvious. And then Tommy Edman for St. Louis. Now, he's pretty expensive, but he's averaging 441 the last 10, averaging 10 fantasy points. Has 2 home runs. He's in a very plus matchup, so I really like him. And then Mark Mathis again at this position as well. So you can have him at either position. Excuse me. Josh Jung for third base is a guy that I really like today. He had a home run yesterday. He's been hitting the ball extremely well in his first 5 games. He's only had really 1 game that he didn't pay off his price, and he's at minimum price, so he's somebody who's worth taking a look at. Then Isaiah Kiner Falefa, I guess that's how you say his name, for the Yankees. He's averaging 10 fantasy points the last 10 games, which I was surprised when I noticed that. But I'm glad that he is, and I'm glad that he is somebody we can potentially use at a minimum price almost on this matchup, and he can go at third base or shortstop. Yoan Moncada, now he's a little bit boomer bust, but he's been playing pretty well, and he's got a nice big plus matchup here. He's averaging 7.8 and 2 home runs the last 10. And then Josh Donaldson is a guy I like here for the Yankees again. I really like going up against Pivetta. Pivetta always kind of sucks. And Donaldson 7.3 for his 12 games against Boston this season, and he's starting to do good again. So I think he's in a good spot. Eduardo Escobar for the Mets is somebody I really like. He's been batting 500 the last 10 with 5 home runs, averaging 13.8. And it's not just been 1 game, it's like almost every game. So he's been just playing extremely well. I really like what he's doing. I think he's in a great matchup, and he's somebody worth taking a look at. And then Gio Urshela for the Minnesota Twins against Kansas City. He's not been hitting quite as good, but he still has a very nice plus matchup here. So I think he's worth taking a look at. At shortstop, I have Isaiah Falafel again. I have Gunnar Henderson again. I have Elvis Andrus, who I really like here. He's absolutely just been playing great for the Chicago. He's averaging 13 fantasy points a game, 318 for the last 10. Carlos Correa is somebody I think is really good at this position. Carlos Correa. He's been playing pretty well lately. I think he's in a great spot. 11.2, 341 last 10 games. Trey Turner is somebody that's just absolutely crushing the ball lately. I really like what he's been playing. I've used him several times in the last week, and he's been averaging 11 fantasy points a game. Then I have Corey Seager, who's also been doing really good for Texas. His batting average is low, but he's having some big games. He had a home run yesterday, in fact, or 2 days ago, I guess. No, it was yesterday's now. Sometimes they update the thing on here, but he's had some really good games in a row, so look for him to continue to get better and better as the season winds down. Bo Bichette has absolutely been just crushing the ball. He was batting 500 for the last 10 games with 6 home runs. Just absolutely insane what he's doing. He's having huge games. He's somebody you got to take a look at against really bad pitching. And then finally, Jeremy Pena, oops. Oh wait, is he not in this? Okay, I don't know why I'm including Houston player here. They're not in this particular slate, so that's a mistake on my part. With that said, that's a really good setup at shortstop. And then into the outfield, we have Lane Thomas for Washington, who's been hitting really well, 11 fantasy points a game for the last 10, and he's not just doing it with home runs, he's doing it just, getting hits and stuff, so I really like him in this slate. David Peralta is a guy that I really like, again, today. I liked him a lot yesterday, and he paid off okay, so with 7 fantasy points, and he's been playing pretty well. He's got a nice big plus matchup against Mitchell White, who, again, I don't know why people think he's a good pitcher, but Anyhow, AJ Pollock is a guy I really like for the White Sox in this matchup against Colorado. Seems like he's in a good spot. He's been batting 351, 8.5 the last 10. Eloy Jimenez, he's been playing pretty good, batting 400, 11.8 fantasy points a game with 4 home runs in the last 10. He's probably my favorite White Sox on this particular slate. Cedric Mullins is another guy I like for Baltimore. Obviously, he's a little bit more expensive, but he's averaging 7.8 last 10. Toscar, Tusker Hernandez for Toronto. He's been having some good games, batting 300, averaging 8 fantasy points a game, had 2 home runs in the last 10. He's been a fun player to have rostered. And then Andrew Vaughn for the White Sox. He's another guy. He hadn't been quite as good lately, but he's still, compared to his other White Sox teammates, but he's still averaging 7.6 last 10, and he's in a good matchup here. And then finally, well, 2 more guys. Or actually 3, sorry. Aaron Judge, he's just a home run threat every time he comes to bat, and just look for him to be another option. He hadn't had any bad games really lately. And then Michael Harris for the Atlanta Braves, he's absolutely been on a tear, averaging 432 the last 10, with 13.3 fantasy points a game. And then finally, I have a Hail Mary option here to round it out, and that's Bubba Thompson for Texas. And he's in a really nice plus matchup. He's had 5 steals in the last 10 games. That really helps boost his points. He's also batting 300. He usually bats at the back of the lineup, so just be aware of that. But he's been having some really good games, and they do like to get him steals and stuff. So with that said, that's the slate. I hope you guys do well. Thank you guys again for liking, commenting, subscribing. Make sure to check in the description below for Patreon and Discord and stuff like that. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them. Have a nice day, guys.